Every virus in Resident Evil can trace its lineage back to one single organism. Something older than civilization, older than agriculture, older than recorded history, and it kills almost everyone it touches. Today, I'm ranking every major Resident Evil virus from least to most deadly, and the one at the top might not be what you expect. Let's start at the foundation, progenitor virus. Here's the thing about the progenitor virus. It's not a bioweapon. It was never designed to be one. It's a naturally occurring pathogen that has existed since roughly 10,000 BCE, quietly infecting members of the West African Ndapaya tribe through a flower called the Sonentrepa. That's thousands of years before anyone thought to put a virus in a briefcase. It wasn't officially discovered until the 1960s, when Oswell Spencer, Edward Ashford, and James Marcus found it in West Africa, an RNA-based retrovirus capable of something impossible. Reversing cellular lysis. It can bring dead cells back to life, which is, not ideal. But here's the kicker. It kills almost everyone it infects. Only a tiny fraction of humans possess the genetic compatibility to survive, and those rare survivors walk away with superhuman abilities. Everyone else just dies. No zombification, no slow mutation, just death. So why is it ranked last? Because you can't weaponize something that only spreads through eating one specific flower in one specific cave. Its transmission vector is essentially zero without refinement. Per infection, it might be the deadliest thing on this list. But extinction potential? It needs help. And that help came in the form of every single virus we're about to cover. Every T-virus zombie, every tyrant, every mutant abomination exists because someone looked at this ancient god virus and thought, I can make this worse. But if you think something that kills on contact sounds bad, wait until you hear about a virus that weaponizes the one thing you can't control, your own fear. T-Phobos virus. Every other virus on this list infects you through biology. A bite, a needle, contaminated water. T-Phobos doesn't care about any of that. It infects you through your own mind. Developed by Alex Wesker's research team on Sign Island, the T-Phobos virus is a retrovirus descended directly from the progenitor virus, but with one critical difference. Its trigger mechanism isn't physical contact or airborne exposure, it's fear. The virus lies dormant in your system until your body produces enough stress hormones, and the moment you feel genuine terror, it activates. Within seconds, your body starts mutating. Think about that for a second. The more scared you get, the faster you die, and you're on an island full of monsters. Good luck staying calm. The entire native population of Cyan Island was wiped out this way. Every single inhabitant transformed into creatures called the Afflicted, which is, not ideal. The virus also showed a preference for male hosts, with female carriers exhibiting entirely different mutation pathways, suggesting the thing was rewriting biology along gender-specific lines that nobody fully understands. Here's where it gets genuinely disturbing. Hosts who experienced irregular mutations didn't just lose their minds. They developed mania and euphoria after transforming. Their own fear killed them, and then their mutated bodies felt great about it. A psychological feedback loop designed by a woman who wanted to create perfect superhumans with zero side effects. She got demons instead. Every single one of them. But the saving grace, if you can call it that, is scope. T-Phobos never left Sign Island. One contained outbreak, one dead population. Conceptually terrifying, practically limited. But if you think psychological horror is bad, wait until you hear what happened when a 12-year-old genius with an obsession engineers her own virus. T. Veronica virus. Every virus we've talked about so far has the same fundamental problem. You infect someone, their brain rots, and you get a shambling idiot that can barely open a door. Alexia Ashford looked at that and said, no, actually, I want my monsters to think. And she wasn't just theorizing. She built it. Project Code? Veronica took the progenitor base and spliced in queen insect egg DNA alongside plant genetic material. The goal wasn't just mutation. It was mutation without the cognitive collapse. Where the T-virus destroys higher brain function as a side effect of cellular breakdown, T-Veronica was specifically engineered to halt that decay entirely. You mutate, you grow stronger, you sprout things that shouldn't be growing out of a human body, but you keep your mind the entire time. Here's where it gets genuinely unsettling. Alexia didn't just create the virus. She injected herself with it voluntarily, then put herself into cryogenic sleep for 15 years to let it bond properly. When she woke up in December 1998, right as HCF was raiding Rockford Island, she could transform at will, sprouting wings, generating combustible blood she could weaponize as projectiles, merging with plant matter to expand her reach across entire environments, all while maintaining full strategic intelligence and the ability to revert back. That's not a zombie. That's not even a bioweapon in the traditional sense. That's closer to a god with a biology degree. The virus also granted hosts the ability to manipulate vegetation and create organic projectile weapons, essentially turning the surrounding environment into an extension of the infected body. You're not fighting a person anymore. You're fighting an ecosystem that hates you. And historically, T. veronica matters beyond its own outbreak. It served as a crucial stepping stone for the C virus, proving that intelligence preservation during mutation wasn't just possible but replicable. Alexia was the proof of concept. But if T. veronica solved the brain problem, the G virus took a completely different approach to evolution, one that makes Alexia's controlled transformations look almost polite by comparison. G virus. Here's the thing about the G virus. Every other pathogen on this list infects you and turns you into something. The G virus infects you and then keeps turning you into something else, and then something else, and then something else again. It never stops. There is no final form. There's just the next mutation. William Birkin discovered it in 1988, but the story actually starts decades earlier. Back in the 1960s, Umbrella was running experiments on a woman named Lisa Trevor. They implanted an NE-alpha parasite into her body expecting the usual results, but Lisa's body rejected it. And here's where it gets weird. Instead of dying, her cells absorbed the parasite's genome and spliced it into her own DNA. Her body created something entirely new. Birkin isolated that anomaly and spent the next 2 decades turning it into the G virus. What makes it genuinely terrifying is the speed. Direct injection causes mutation within seconds. Not hours, not days, seconds. Birkin stabbed himself with it while bleeding out from gunshot wounds, and his body immediately began restructuring itself into what fans call the G1 form. From there, every time he sustained enough environmental damage, he mutated again. G2, G3, G4, G5, each form progressively less human and more powerful. Evolution with absolutely zero breaks. But the real nightmare detail that nobody talks about enough is the reproduction. G mutants can reproduce asexually. T-virus creatures are universally infertile, which is basically nature's safety valve. The G virus doesn't have that safety valve. One G mutant could theoretically spawn an entire population. Brian Irons, Ben Bertolucci, Curtis Miller, they all demonstrate the same thing. Once G virus takes hold, the host becomes an uncontrollable engine of body horror that just keeps escalating. So why isn't it ranked higher? Because you can't aim it. You can't deploy it strategically. You can't build an army with something that won't stop mutating long enough to follow orders. It's a loaded gun that shoots in every direction, including back at you. But if you think uncontrollable mutation is scary, wait until you see what happens when a virus actually cooperates with its creators. T-virus. Here's the thing about the T-virus. Every other pathogen on this list is theoretical carnage, potential destruction, could be apocalypses. The T-virus already did it. Over 100,000 people dead in a single event, and the United States government had to nuke an American city off the map just to stop the bleeding. That's not a hypothetical. That's a Tuesday in Raccoon City. Dr. James Marcus achieved his breakthrough on January 13, 1978, combining the progenitor virus with leech DNA to create what would formally be designated the tyrant virus. And from that moment forward, it became the single most deployed bioweapon in human history. Not because it's the most complex, not because it creates the scariest monsters, but because it works. Every single time. The transmission vectors alone are a nightmare. Airborne, waterborne, direct injection, contact with infected fluids. You could catch this thing from breathing near the wrong air vent, drinking tap water, or getting sneezed on by someone who's already 3 days into necrosis. The virus causes what's clinically called cannibal disease, which is, not a great name for something you want to survive. Progressive tissue death, catastrophic brain damage, and then full reanimation of dead tissue. You die, and then your body gets back up and starts eating people. Cool, but the zombies are just the baseline. The T-virus also produced tyrants like Mr. X and Nemesis, hunters, lickers, and dozens of other bioorganic weapons depending on the host's genetics and exposure method. One virus, an entire army's worth of monsters. And Raccoon City wasn't the only outbreak. The T-virus showed up globally, over and over, proving that containment is basically a fantasy once this thing gets loose. Nothing in the franchise matched its confirmed body count from a single incident until the C-virus came along years later. That's decades of being the reigning champion of mass death, but at least the T-virus needs land to spread. The next virus on our list doesn't even need dry ground. T-ABSS, Virus. Every virus on this list so far has one thing in common: they're land problems. Infect a city, infect a building, infect an island. Containable, at least in theory. The T-Abyss virus doesn't care about your quarantine perimeters because it was built for the ocean. In 2003, someone looked at Umbrella's perfected T-virus and thought, you know what this needs? Deep sea genetics. They combined it with an abyssal retrovirus pulled from the Kermadec Trench, one of the deepest points on Earth, and created something that infects land-based and aquatic organisms simultaneously, which is, not ideal. The virus restructures its host by breaking down fat tissue while strengthening the muscular and skeletal systems, essentially rebuilding you into something adapted for water. Fins. Gelatinous tissue. The works. Infected humans become ooze, these shambling translucent nightmares that look like someone left a person in a bathtub for 6 months. Others become sea creepers, skag dead, or globsters, each one more horrifying and more aquatic than the last. Here's where it gets scary on a planetary scale. The Terra Grigia panic in 2004 proved T-Abyss works on urban populations. The bioterrorist group Il Veltro unleashed it on an entire floating city, and the result was catastrophic enough that the whole place had to be destroyed. A year later, the Queen Zenobia incident saw 3 cruise ships, each carrying roughly 2,000 people, turned into floating morgues full of aquatic abominations. But those are contained outbreaks. The real nightmare scenario is open water contamination. T-Abyss can jump from humans to marine organisms and trigger chain reactions through entire ecosystems. Microbes to fish to whales. One infected coastline could cascade through the food chain from the bottom up, and nobody has a quarantine protocol for the Pacific Ocean. Most viruses threaten cities. T-Abyss threatens 70% of the planet's surface. But if you think environmental devastation is unsettling, wait until you hear about the virus that turns your own mind into the weapon. Virus. Forget underground labs. Forget mutant monsters in sewers. The A-virus is a bioweapon delivered through bottled water, and that's what makes it the most terrifyingly modern virus in this entire franchise. Created by arms dealer Glenn Arias, the A-virus is a level 4 classification pathogen built around a 3-component system. Component 1 is the latent virus, which sits dormant in your body doing absolutely nothing. Component 2 is the trigger virus, which activates the infection on command. Component 3 is the vaccine, which cures it on command. You see the problem here. Arias dispersed the latent virus into the Great Lakes water supply through his company, Aguem Industries, which sold contaminated bottled water to the public. One of the largest freshwater systems in North America, just casually poisoned through a commercial product you'd grab at a gas station. The Great Lakes murders produced roughly 14 casualties. The Institute of Biotechnology attack killed 6. Then came the New York bioterrorist attack, which resulted in over 100 deaths across Manhattan. But the body count isn't what makes this one scary. Here's the thing. Every other virus on this list, once it's out, it's out. You can't put it back in the bottle. The A-virus flips that entirely. You release the latent strain to millions of people through drinking water, and nobody even knows they're infected. Then whenever you want, you trigger it, cure it, trigger it again. You've essentially built a remote control for a zombie apocalypse. The infections cause cannibal disease similar to the T-virus, violent tendencies, loss of higher brain function, cannibalistic behavior. But unlike the T-virus, the controller decides when it starts and when it stops. One person with access to the trigger component could hold an entire city hostage indefinitely. Scale that up to a national water supply, and you're looking at extinction level potential from a single actor with a grudge and a bottling plant, which is, not ideal. But if you think controllable zombies sound bad, wait until you see what happens when someone combines multiple virus strains into one package and lets it loose on a global scale. See virus. Every virus we've covered so far has one thing in common. They were contained. One city, one island, one facility. The C-virus broke that pattern completely. Created by Carla Radames, this thing is essentially a greatest hits album of everything that came before it. She took genes from T. Veronica, spliced in properties from the G-virus, and produced something that combines the worst features of both into a single deployable package. It's the Frankenstein's monster of bioweapons, except Frankenstein's monster didn't kill over 100,000 people across multiple countries simultaneously. Here's what makes the C-virus uniquely terrifying. It has 2 completely separate infection methods, and each one creates a different type of threat. Direct injection produces Javo. Infected soldiers that retain their intelligence can use weapons, coordinate tactics, and communicate with each other. They're not shambling corpses bumping into walls. They're shooting back at you. Meanwhile, airborne gas dispersal creates standard zombies, the classic mindless horde. So picture this. You're fighting an organized military force and a zombie apocalypse at the same time, which is, not ideal. deal, but here's where it gets worse. The regenerative properties in this virus are so advanced that Jovo can spontaneously mutate damaged body parts into entirely new appendages mid-combat. You shoot an arm off, it grows back as something worse. A wing, a shield, a blade. They adapt to whatever's killing them in real time. I don't know what to tell you. That's just what it does. And if you're hoping for a cure, don't. The anti-C vaccine that was eventually developed had a near 0% survival rate for anyone who had fully transformed into a Javo or complete mutant. Once the mutation completes, you're done. There's no coming back. The 2012-2013 outbreaks hit multiple countries at the same time, confirmed casualties exceeding 100,000. That's not a theoretical body count. That's not a projection. That's documented. The C virus didn't just threaten an apocalypse. It actually delivered one, and it took a global coordinated response to stop it from going further. But if you think a virus that already proved it could end the world is scary, wait until you hear about one that was specifically designed to do it on purpose: Ouroboros. Every virus on this list was built to create weapons. Ouroboros was built to end the species. Between 2003 and 2009, Albert Wesker and Tricell's African branch, led by Excella Gione, developed something that makes every other pathogen in this franchise look like a science fair project. Ouroboros wasn't designed to make monsters. It wasn't designed to create super soldiers or controllable armies. It was designed to kill 99.99% of the human population and leave behind only those who shared specific genetic markers with the ancient Ndapaya king. Here's the thing. Every virus we've talked about today represents a piece of the puzzle. Progenitor's selectivity, the T virus's raw lethality, the G virus's evolutionary potential. Wesker took all of it, refined it, and created the logical endpoint, a deliberate, targeted extinction event disguised as evolution. The disease progresses through two distinct stages, each worse than the last. But unlike the C virus or T abyss, there's no zombie army, no mutant horde, just death. Quiet, efficient, species-ending death for everyone who doesn't meet Wesker's genetic criteria, which is, basically everyone alive. In March 2009, the final testing phase began in Kijuju, Africa. Wesker was hours from global deployment. Hours. Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar stopped it at the last possible moment, and I genuinely mean the last possible moment. This wasn't a "we found the lab 6 months early" situation. This was a "the missile is basically fueled" situation. After Wesker died, samples were recovered and brought to Sign Island. They were never successfully redeployed. The closest the Resident Evil franchise ever came to actual human extinction was stopped by 2 BSAA agents and a volcano. So which Resident Evil virus is the deadliest? Ouroboros. Not because of its body count, which is relatively small, but because it is the only virus on this list where the intent was total human extinction and the capability matched the ambition. Every other virus created monsters by accident or design. Ouroboros was going to create a graveyard the size of the planet. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.